Good morning. Today, my guest is Jonny Young. Jonny is a client of mine. We've been working together only a few months, really. He works for a company that I did a little bit of work for, I think a year or two ago. My perception of time was completely blown with COVID and working from home. And um, he embodies so much of the seller code. Um, he's here today to tell his story. We're going to go back into early influences. We're going to talk about his values, and we're going to talk about the results that he's generating. Because at the end of the day, it's all well and good talking about ethics and values, but we're going to get a lot of pushback from people who know the way things are. And when things get tight, we have to work harder. We have to do more of what worked in the past. But the problem is when the context changed and we didn't, our sales results fell off the cliff. Last year, only 27% of 365 SaaS companies that are Pavilion members and were on the Evster platform, managing $3 billion worth of pipeline, only 27% hit quota last year. I think something like only 40% hit 80%. So unless we adapt to the context that's changing, we're going to get crushed because we can do nothing about the fact that the context is changing. The fact that the world has developed a global mental disorder of lots of people becoming fearful, uncertain, and afraid, and also having a scarcity mentality, all simultaneously results in recession. The system has sucked so much wealth out of the middle class and into the hands of asset owners. That's now driving up the price of domestic property. So, people in Jonny's generation, your generation, are very unlikely to be able to get onto the housing ladder or own any assets for a very long time. So you're already starting at a disadvantage. And if you keep doing what doesn't work, you just create more downstream work for yourself that doesn't work. It compounds. So what I'm looking for you guys to take from today is how much more effective it is just to be a decent human being, to show up with kindness, genuinely caring about your customer's outcome and putting their outcome before yours. So without any further blathering from me, Jonny, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a delight. I mean, you are clearly inspiring other people around you, because I have conversations with other people in your business, and your performance is outstanding. But how you perform is what I'm really interested in, because I think that distinguishes you from those who have a mindset of I win, you lose, or I win, then you win. I think this mindset of you win first and then I win is the difference between greatness and above average. Now, in most organizations, above average looks great, but in the grand scheme of things, it's just above average. And you were just above average because you were performing at the top of your game and then you weren't. And you've struggled in the last 12 months. Okay, so tell me, what were your key values and the influences that created them that define how you decide how you behave, what you say?
Well, I think that point you just made there about how you achieve those goals is the critical thing. So my sales journey my business journey started a long time ago with the influence of my father on my life. He was a project manager in the city, worked for consultancies and banks and things like that. I was the very classic university student who really had no idea what they wanted to do with their life and kind of fell arse backwards into the world of sales, and have done a couple of different things like through my career. But I always looked at my dad, and he's a very methodical person, a good critical thinker. And I, without knowing what I wanted to do, just felt like if I can just find my foothold in the city, in business, like I'm probably have enough cognitive ability to kind of figure things out from there, and hopefully I do okay. But we'll see where we end up without any real defined sort of goals to work towards. The thing for me moving into the world of sales was, I went from looking at my dad, and I've always been fairly good at being able to have constructive conversations with people around me, people that you have relationships with, people you see every day, people where you can quite quickly get into the nuance of why things need to be done a certain way, and that could be related to sports clubs that I played at and captained, and school and projects you have to do at school and stuff like that. The thing for me with sales was two things really. One, you kind of grow up with this, whether it's media, whether it's how it's romanticized in films and that kind of stuff. Sales is seen as this bizarro world of people make the magic happen. You don't really see what's underneath all of that, and you have these incredibly high performers, and you have people that struggle along, and that is often portrayed as something that comes down to personality. The gift of the gab is something that's always thrown around, especially when you're younger. And for me, that was totally alien. Like, I'm a relatively introverted person, not extremely so, but relatively so. And this idea that I could pick up the phone and start to influence people was just so alien to me. And I spent a lot of time, a lot of wasted energy, trying to talk myself into that being that person, trying to think that I could be that person. And ultimately, it was a very futile exercise for me, because for me, I focus mainly on myself. How am I doing things? What am I doing that's going to help the situation that I'm in? But I really struggled to put the world of sales together with that mindset of just continual, gradual improvement and actioning of things. And that led to some very mixed results, as I think you would expect, right? There was some
Been
success
there.
along the way. There was some luck. There was a couple of dodgy job change decisions. There was a couple of good ones. And that brought me to where I am now, being to Powty, but still carrying all of that baggage with me,
Okay.
of not quite understanding how I fit into the world of sales.
Can I ask you something then? In terms of that journey, were there moments where you were asked to compromise who you were, where you were asked to do things that you knew were wrong, but you felt the pressure to do them?
So that's an interesting question, and the answer to that objectively is yes.
Okay, because
Um,
in my experience, that a lot of pressure to omit or to exaggerate or to withhold, and it's not, it's meant in theory because it's good for the customer, but it's not. It's entirely
yeah,
self-serving.
yeah.
So I'm curious about how that made you feel about your leadership.
So my experience of it is not, there's nothing outlandish in there where I point to that and go, do you know what? Just you immediately know that was completely wrong and it was a very egregious scenario. However, my experience of it has been more of a gradual creep. So an opportunity tends to move through the pipeline and you withhold something early on.
Mhm.
And then it continues to move through and the stakes build a little bit. And then maybe something else gets withheld. And then it gets down to a contract negotiation or the point of signature. And not only does something get withheld, but then there's some people will dress it up as a white lie, but let's be honest, it's a lie. And it's that gradual creep as the stakes get higher and the withholding of information or missharing of information gets higher and higher through that cycle. But ultimately, what we need is customers, right? And whether we're shareholders or not, you know, the business to uh, the business has to pay our salary if we're not, and if we're shareholders, we have direct equity, and then all those problems come home to roost as the customer becomes a customer of the company, and that is a huge amount of anxiety. So not only for my own personal self-worth of feeling like I'm doing a good job, but then it's okay, when is this all going to come crashing down?
And again, as you observe that journey as being one of the team, um, what sort of compromises did you see going on whilst the good times were happening? Because let's face it, whilst you've been learning your craft, we've largely been in an upcycle. The last 14 years has been generally quite kind. Last year crashed a bit, but mostly people were buying nice to haves. There was money, it was cheap, it was free, virtually free. And everyone thought this would last forever, and then it didn't. How has your approach helped you to thrive through that downturn, despite the fact that 76% or 73% of salespeople failed to hit their quota last year?
Well, I think I think a big part of that is that I didn't necessarily thrive all the way through that. There was some good and some bad, but last year was a struggle. Joining a new company, it was just before that point where things started to go quite sideways in the world, and last year was a struggle. But the thing that I'm proud of is that I didn't look at it as I just need to wait for it to get better and get back to the good times. It was looking back at me, what could I do differently? And then that eventually became the work that you and I are doing together. And then that has had a compounding effect through the course of the last few months to get me back to, at the moment, a good level of performance. So that reflection and actually evaluating what was I actually doing? Like, was I proud of that? Was I doing good work, or was I just a bit lucky here and a bit unlucky here? That for me was the critical point, and hopefully for people that will listen to this or watch this, hopefully they don't have to get to kind of the real struggle mentally to start looking at things that way. Um, but yeah, for me it was okay, right? Can I continue to live my life this way? And the answer was no. And so then that journey started of trying to figure out how I can actually be fulfilled doing this line of work in this job, um, and hopefully have some success along the way.
So what does fulfilled mean to you? How do you know you've done a good job?
So coming back to kind of that original line in the introduction there of how we do things, not what we've achieved, is the critical thing for me. So I always struggled immensely with actually evaluating, like, what was good work? What did good work look like? How did I behave? How did that help the people that were involved, whether it be internal or the customer? And for me, there's so much about sales that I can't control. I can't control that water cooler conversation on the customer side. I can't control our business and who sets the targets and how they define success. But I define what I feel like is acting in an ethical and helpful way. And for me, it's detaching myself from the outcome. Now, I do believe that by adopting this framework of decision making and behaviors, it will result in more success. But that bit is really not that important to me anymore. My absolute key priority is to behave in a way that people, I could meet them on the street and they would go, hey, nice to meet you face to face. And if they are turning up being like, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Then I haven't done my job properly. So that's kind of like my sort of guiding light is if I met this person in a bar on the street, whatever, would they be happy to see me? And if the answer is no, then I didn't do my job properly.
It's really interesting because you've just made me think of a paradox here. And the paradox is, as salespeople, as managers, as leaders, because I think sales is a leadership role. The paradox is we need really high degrees of empathy, yet we need to be detached from our personal outcome and exclusively focused on the customer's job to be done. Now, taking those three positions and welding them into a cohesive, unified reason for everybody involved to stay committed and motivated is a very rare skill. So tell me this, how has your focus on time shifted? Because in most organizations, everything's about the short term. It's this quarter, maybe next. How's your perspective on time and speed and haste shifted?
A big way recently. So one of the things that during the course of our work that has really resonated to me is how we view those relationships. So the investment that we make today, tomorrow, in a year's time, we want to invest in those relationships, whether it be internal or external, so they are solid relationships for 20, 30, 40 years, however long is left in my career, or maybe even slightly beyond that, however long I've got left on this planet. And so often we prioritize the short-term transaction that has that little spike in, numbers and dopamine and all of that kind of stuff over that long-term perspective. So I know that there are some things that in the line of work that I have to do that I have to consider, like the short-term objectives, quarterly targets, monthly targets, all of that kind of stuff. But that has to come secondary now in my framework of thinking to how am I behaving in a way that would mean that this relationship can continue past the point of contract signature, past the point of being at parity. And hopefully that will then add value to me all the way through my life and mean that if I was to change jobs or whatever it might be, that value would continue to exist in my life. And so it's a much longer term thinking.
That prospecting for a customer for life is a massive shift because your intent is projected out unconsciously. The buyer's brain receives it unconsciously. If your intent is to hit quota, book a meeting, get a demo booked, try and get them to agree to your proposal terms, that is self-serving. And the buyer's brain is wired to protect it against external threats. Ratcheting up pain or even doing pain discovery in the early stages of the sale creates this negative association It's called the pratfall effect, where the next time you contact them, they associate the last emotions that they had when they engaged with you. Well,
Yeah.
if you do pain discovery and leave them with a glimmer of hope, that's good. But what's better is never reminding them of their pain and helping them see a clear path to that future that is within their grasp.
Yeah.
So that kind of value comes through patience, it comes through acumen, it comes through empathy.
I think patience is the biggest word there. The most common thing that I see that now I'm trying to adopt this way of thinking is a little bit like a light bulb going off every time I see it, is that pincer movement tactic. Like pincer movement is designed to trap, right? And it can be as innocuous as sounds like we've got everything covered. Are you happy with that? But all you're doing then is making the customer feel like they are being pincered towards your objective. And if you just have that patience, continue to be curious rather than try and accelerate things for your own agenda. What I've found recently is that none of that stuff has been needed. Like if everything's been covered, the customer already knows that. So I don't need to put that in an email.
Mm-hmm.
But all I'm doing by putting that in the email is going, oh God, it's another sales guy wanting to get me closed here. And it's now I see it. It's like if that was me on the other end of it, it'd be a massive turn off.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with confirming what you've agreed. However, it makes sense. If you agree, who's going to do that? And why you're doing it, so that both sides mutually agree and it is to serve both sides. I've realized in the last year or so how wrong I've been for the last 20 years teaching people all the things that I've taught them. And it was out of ignorance, and it's taken a lot of scar tissue. What I've realized is there are 6 fundamental rules that if you follow them, you never trigger your buyer's amygdala to see you as a threat. The first thing is anything you do or say or type must be timely, it must be relevant, and it must be valuable to them personally. It must help them understand with clarity the reality of their situation. It must help them advance their understanding of what is possible and within their grasp without any omission, lying, exaggeration, or coercion. And it must help them advance towards making a good decision well. If it doesn't do all of those things, then don't do it. If it does, do it. And funnily enough, what you do then is you enlist the buyer's brain to see you as one of us instead of one of them, which is ultimately our objective, because we want them to invite us in and to create moments of buyer intimacy. Buyer safety is essential. So you seem to be manifesting that beautifully. I'm curious, what are the things that you've learned to say no to in order to keep your buyer safe, to protect the relationship from false urgency, from the pressure to try to perform, hit this month's quota, whatever. I'm curious how you've been able to resist that pressure, because it must be there and it will be there in everyone's world if they are in any form of fast growth company, if they're private equity backed.
Yeah, so I think one thing that is probably obvious to most people listening is that it is easier when you have some underlying performance, and there are still plenty of bad habits that I want to continue to peel back the layers of and unpick so that when times get tough again, that I do continue to exhibit that. I think that framework that you just went through there of, does this add value to them? You know, is it serving my agenda or theirs? That guides everything that I'm doing. So if I haven't spoken to a customer in a couple of weeks, a prospect, and I'm saying something like, well, you told me this, you want to get it closed this by March or whatever it is, that is just serving myself. So what can I say that is serving the customer? It might be something along the lines of, hey, where are you at here if you need me, just to be that kind of friend in the situation. Or it might be something a little bit deeper, like, hey, I haven't heard you for in a couple of weeks. I feel like maybe I haven't done my job to the full capabilities I can. Maybe we should hit a pause on this and go back to the reason why you want to do this and really understand whether it's of value to you. And if not, then we can move on. But it's all about the customer, right? And the internal pressures, I'll take that on my back. You said sales is a leadership role. Part of leadership is to absorb a lot of pressure, a lot of nonsense. And I think it's the same thing being an account executive on the front line. Is you just have to have that resilience and fortitude to, provided it fits with your values, to absorb that and just be like, hey, look, I'm not pushing this because I don't feel like we've got that partnership with the customer yet. I could go and ask them to try and get them closed this quarter, but actually they're probably going to ghost us if we do that, and we're just going to kick ourselves in the teeth next quarter. And there's I think you just have to have that resilience to manage that internally.
And in doing that, what additional unnecessary workload have you prevented downstream?
So the biggest thing is that we're most likely, the majority of the conversations that we have, the timing is almost certainly not right. The chances of finding someone with the right problem, with the right model, and at the exact right time that they're ready to move forward on a journey is so slim. But that long-term investment piece is when those closed losts do come back and the timing is right. We've done maybe a little bit of education on what's possible, where we see some pain points around the corner for them. Then the pipeline starts to get much fatter over time. And so it's almost like inbound from an outbound AE perspective. And then there are a much higher quality of conversation. They may even have gone and bought a competitor or a partial competitor, and it hasn't quite worked out for them as they expected. Maybe they're doing some of the sales tactics that we don't want to exhibit. And then that relationship stands the test of time. So by having that come back, then the pressure on, clicking your fingers and trying to get outbound wins and all of that kind of stuff is massively reduced. You can then focus more time on the prospects that are in pipeline, and it's a compounding positive effect.
So what I'm hearing you say is shift your focus from short to medium term, never be transactional, especially when they are in that passive looking phase, because the timing, the odds are maybe 1 in 20 who you actually connect with and get past all the layers of resistance and objection will be in the market to buy something that you're offering today. There's probably about another 40% that will be in the market in the next 6 to 36 months. And you're cultivating those relationships in the passive looking phase without ever trying to sell to them during that passive looking phase. So by the time they move into the active looking phase and they're now looking for vendors, you're pretty much the only show in town because everyone else is coming in to try and peddle product. And you've established a relationship over time where you've been credible, where you've been reliable, where you've demonstrated low self-orientation, and you've shared confidences because they trust you. Is that fair?
100%.
Okay. Now, by doing that, what you've effectively done is you've halved the level of complexity in the relationship, because you've taken yourself out of the focus, and instead of trying to be the hero, you've moved up a level. So you're now the guide, the sage, and you've made space for them to fill the room of hero. So I'm curious, how do you develop that kind of relationship with your customers so that they are the hero in their own narrative, and it's not about you, it's not about Tapalti?
Yeah, so I think the personal part of their responsibilities, their fears, their pressures. I mean, it's something that going back to kind of what I always struggle with coming into sales it was always about me. It was my fears, that little green man on the shoulder that was saying, like, you can't do this, you're not good enough, all that kind of stuff. And then what I've realized over time is that everyone has that to different levels, but everyone has something that they worry about in their job. So I think understanding that personal aspect is critical, because when we talk about Tapalti, we want to talk about it in the terms of how we can help you be successful. We don't want to talk about it in terms of how you process it, because even the people that process invoices, I can't imagine they actually care about the process of processing invoices.
No, fair. Okay.
I'm pretty sure no one does, and definitely CFOs don't, and definitely financial
As a
directors
kid,
don't.
all I ever wanted to do was process invoices.
Exactly. So what they don't care at all about how that process works, but what they do care about is, I've done my ACCA qualifications, and I'm stuck here in a role where 50% of my time is processing invoices. So how do I demonstrate to my manager that I actually have the capabilities to progress? How would I take that to market if I want to change jobs? What can I point to that actually added value to the company that means that I could progress into a higher level? And I think that is the kind of critical thing is, competitors will go in and say, oh, you've got an invoice processing problem. Here's how we process invoices. No one cares. But what they do care about is how they can achieve their goals and how that helps the company achieve their goals. So even if they're not ready for Tapalti or any solution at all, if we can have a conversation around how it improves their working life, their relationship with their company, that for me is like the foundation of where people will then come back to the conversation and go, okay, at least this person that I spoke to understands a bit more about my life than a generic sales rep.
That's lovely. I mean, if I'm to summarize what I'm hearing so far, you genuinely intend and do make a positive impact, not only on your customers, but it's then has a ripple effect on how other people see you perform. So you're influencing that. You're building genuine relationships internally and externally, because you can't get your job done unless you've got good internal relationships, because let's face it, the internal sale is the hardest. You're continuously learning and growing, and you take responsibility for learning. You're not waiting to be trained, you're choosing to learn. And therein lies a huge difference between top 4% and everybody else. They're waiting to be spoon-fed. They're victims. They're expecting that the world owes them something. Entitlement's the ugliest of human qualities. And again, you collaborate. You collaborate with your customer to co-develop a solution that delivers an excellent result for them. And the symptom of that is excellent results for you. That aligns with your values and purpose. And in doing this, you stand out. You're challenging the status quo. You're not content to just sit back and accept the way things were and what everyone else is doing. You're looking to actually improve because you're taking ownership. And in doing that, you're empowering others. And I think you're leaving a legacy. So, that deserves recognition. That deserves to be rewarded. And I suspect it is.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is there is no end point here. Like, this is just a journey. And some of the things that we've talked about here, I'm definitely not saying that I've got it cracked in any way. And I think there's loads of stuff
Who has?
that exactly. I view this as almost the start of my journey. Like, I feel like got to where I was 6 months ago, and this is almost a fresh chapter in the book. And it comes from that mindset of wanting to improve. But if I can just 0.5, 1%, 0.1% each day, like, that's where I get fulfillment from.
Oh.
And I love to teach that as well. Like, I don't want to pontificate or anything like that, but if I can ask questions of those around me, if I can add value, I love working with the FDRs and talking them through my thought process with the guys on our team and talking them through my thought process. That's probably one of my favorite parts of my job. And that helps me to get better at the same time as well, because maybe they'll, in response, provide some thought-provoking debate or whatever it is. So it's just about having that mindset of just take responsibility for trying to get better. Try and do the best you can, try and get better. There's so much crap that's going to influence how we're defined. But I don't worry about that as much anymore. I just worry about, am I doing the best that I can? And if I am, that's where I get my fulfillment from. And the symptoms are nice along the way, hopefully, but I don't worry about that so much anymore.
Well, that teach once, learn twice philosophy is exceptionally healthy. And it requires you to put yourself in a position of vulnerability and to humble yourself, where you go looking for people to tell you you're wrong. That one of the greatest qualities that real leaders have is that humility and vulnerability to invite other people's opinion. And I think what I'm hearing is how this is strengthening the integration between who you are and what you do. And actually, you're fully integrated because the person you are at work is the same person you are at home and at play. Is that a fair observation?
Completely. It's been a dramatic shift for me over the last few months as to how I view myself, because it's such a big part of our lives, right? And it's been a huge shift with way more gratification, a lot more peace of mind, and a lot less anxiety. So that's very nice to have.
And what have you cut out? What have you stopped doing that you've discovered was utterly unnecessary and counterproductive?
Good question.
What do you do less of?
So, I mean, the biggest thing is trying to convince the people I speak to that my agenda is the most important thing. And how that represents itself, whether it's internally, externally, is a lot of nuance there. But like, just stopped worrying about my agenda being the most important thing and how can I be helpful, if we were to put it in a nutshell.
Lovely. What
And that
most
itself also helps build those relationships.
in terms of what matters most, your focus has obviously shifted to the outcome that the customer is looking for and building, co-developing that solution with them. If you're doing that, presumably you have to carve the time out of somewhere. Where have you taken that from? What are you doing less of in terms of doing work that contributed maybe 10 quid an hour to the business. And now the work that you're involved in is delivering 1,000 or 10,000 pounds an hour.
So I think in sales, well, this is probably true of a lot of jobs, but I think in sales, we're often guilty of thinking that we have less time than we do. And so I wouldn't necessarily characterize it as I had to take time away. Like, let's be honest. Like, was I working every hour of every day, 5 days a week? Like, no, I wasn't, and I still don't. But provided that the biggest thing is being clear on what I want to achieve, because when I'm clear on what I want to achieve, I find purpose in the activities that need to be done. So a good example of that is how we think about opportunities in pipeline. I would prioritize busy work, things that looked a certain way on a dashboard, over taking an hour of the day for just critical thinking. And that, so more adding time where now I sort of we've done this work together. It's not, I feel guilty because I'm taking time out of my day to just think, maybe if I can close my laptop or go for a walk. Like, that's actually where the value lies. And so prioritizing that work over looking busy is where the time has come back.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm really curious. I mean, you said that you weren't often productive. I mean, back in 2012, the data was that the average salesperson was 35% productive on, 25 to 35% productive on any given working day. The data coming out of Connect and Sell suggested in 2018 that the average SDR only actually spoke to someone on their list who took their call, and they had an effective for 3 minutes a day. So for 7 hours and 57 minutes of contracted work, they were essentially just doing admin and creating waste. And that's got worse. So most sellers, in my experience, find themselves on this hamster wheel, and they have to work harder to produce less. I'm curious, over the last 6 months since you've made this significant shift in thinking, how much more time do you spend in front of the customer? How much more time do you spend in designing and planning, in developing relationships internally, externally, developing yourself, compared with just manic dialing in order to try and get a meeting to hit a spurious quota?
So I think that is a little bit of chicken and egg. I think as my approach has changed, and I'd like to think the quality of my work has changed, that brings more engagement, and that brings more opportunity to spend time in front of the customer. So, for example, customer that we signed recently, rather than have a catch-up call to see if we're going to move forward or not, it was, okay, these are the resources that we can bring in. That involved some internal time, sort of selling that to the internal resources and making sure that they're on board, designing how we want to go about that. But that in essence is time spent with the customer, right? It's just the pre-planning part rather than the live delivery. And that has definitely, maybe if we were to put some guesstimates on it, it would be 10% with customers, 50% busy work, some PDP, and some doing nothing, filling out the rest of the thing. And that's maybe come up to more 35% of time. And ideally, I'd like to have 50% of my time at least spent on entirely prospect driven activities, and then to figure out the rest of the time in terms of trying to generate new relationships, new leads, and internal activities that we have to do, etc. So even in that short time frame, that amount of time has definitely increased.
And if you're doing that over the medium term when they're not ready to buy, what's different about the type of conversations that you're having? Because if you're being transactional, obviously you're going to be talking about product features, BANT, all that kind of stuff. How have the conversations in discovery changed? And what's the difference in the quality of the information that you're getting back?
So yeah, quality is improving. Still relatively kind of early in what I feel like this is the next part of the journey. But yeah, I think it becomes more of a two-way conversation. I think the worst discovery calls are where it's essentially an interview process.
An interrogation.
Because yeah, that's the thing. It's like qualitatively, I've noticed that people are more willing to have a conversation rather than answer my questions. And if I look back on previous opportunities, those that have just answered my questions almost certainly didn't buy, probably ghosted. And maybe they ended up with a competitor, maybe they didn't, but I didn't add any value to their life. But when people are willing to actually have a conversation, that's where a relationship can build. That's where you can then start down the pathway of a mutual relationship where project and not just a transactional approach, catch-up meetings, all these kind of things with no predefined agendas. I think the biggest thing is the next meeting after that has a much higher quality because we've started on that journey of understanding where they can get value from the next meeting. And then that just continues to ripple through the process.
This is really interesting. Tell me about the middle of your funnel. Describe how it was and how it is now, and compare it with how you see other people's middle of the funnel evolving, and how yours is moving.
So biggest thing is from a like internal perspective, it's a lot thinner because we're looking at what is actually realistic or not, and what actually means that it will be realistic or not. But that's a good thing because then we don't need to focus time spinning wheels, trying to put catch-up calls in, trying to make phone calls to people that are in the middle of the funnel, but actually they're at best at the start of the funnel. And the middle of the funnel is now viewed as where are those relationships where you could pick up the phone to someone and have a conversation. So those that are in the middle of the funnel, I would feel much more confident in that relationship with them.
And are they receptive to picking up your call and responding to your voicemails or your messages? Is there a two-way flow of conversation with those people in the middle of your funnel, or are you having to chase?
Definitely more so. Yeah, actually, so I've just come back from Dubai, and although I wasn't out there for business, one of my prospects was, and we were WhatsApping, found out we were there at the same time, and we actually met while we were both out in Dubai. And A, that's fun, like
Yeah.
makes the work more worthwhile. But B, just the fact that someone would have that level of engagement with me, that gives me a lot of fulfillment.
Well, but again, the reality is selling is about human beings engaging with other human beings. And I can't even begin to tell you how happy it makes me to hear that, because what that is a real moment of human intimacy. And if you're applying that seller code, if you're putting the customer first and recognizing that the reward, the sale, is simply a byproduct of doing an excellent job of keeping the customer's outcome firmly in mind and obsessing about that. You create the conditions of buyer safety.
Yeah.
So they let you in. I'm curious, in terms of sales cycle length, are you seeing any shift there? Are you seeing any shift in the velocity of deals?
Just a quick one on that previous point, actually. That's exactly what happened here. On paper, there's a partner involved, there's a critical business reason for making a change. And on paper, after a discovery call, after a follow-up call, it looks like it should be a slam dunk opportunity. Then we met and we just talked, and I could tell he was a bit nervous. Like, the business is pretty young, and it is a change for them that would cost them a bit more than their current scenario. And we got that they were nervous. And so we just decided to slow things down a little bit. We've got a few more steps that we need to go through here. We don't want to put a contract in front of you tomorrow because you're not quite ready to make this. That's kind of the quality output that I'm talking about there in terms of
Beautiful.
how we work with our customers. So just wanted to add that on that one. And sorry, could you repeat?
And well, I can't remember the question now. Can someone who's on the chat tell us what the question was? I was so engrossed.
Oh, sales cycles. Yeah, so a lot faster.
Okay.
Deals are closing in like a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
And your average sales cycle length as a company is?
Off the top of my head, like 4 to 5 months, I think.
Wow.
And that's also a symptom of that pipeline that's being created now is actually the investment that happened 6 months ago, a year ago, 18 months ago. If we educate on the front end and don't focus on whether they're going to buy or not, that means that when they do come back to a conversation, you don't have to spend as much time building all of that kind of stuff. They just need to be ready, and they need to trust you at that point to actually make the sale.
I'm curious how many people you're typically engaging with now over that time period. Because in my experience, the majority of salespeople, especially at the sort of mid to enterprise level, have a tendency only to speak to 1 or 2 people. And there's often 6, 10, 16 people involved in the evaluation, in the decision-making, in the allocation of funds. So I'm really curious how you've been nurturing and multi-threading, and then using each of those conversations to build your understanding, your awareness of the context in which they're operating, so that you can be more valuable each time.
So being completely open and honest, like, I think this is an area that I need to improve on significantly. I think we've seen it go up, and it's not just about a buzzword of multi-threading, i.e. let's try and speak to as many people as we can. It's the purpose with which we do those things, right? So if we're going to go and speak to someone else, do it for the reason that you're going to add value to the key person's life. This person said this. I think that this might affect you because we have this understanding of your business already. Would it help to talk about, if we were to solve this over here, that this could actually affect your life? I think multi-threading gets thrown around too much in terms of just like, okay, go and do it. But okay, you went and spoke to the CTO after speaking with the financial director. Rather than make your financial director as your key point of contact look like a hero, you've made them look silly internally and blown up the whole thing. But if it's a human conversation of, we think we might be able to help over here, could we also help over here? Can we make you both look heroes? Then that's where the effectiveness of it comes from. And then we're doing it with purpose, right? And so I feel like I've done a lot of it without purpose, and it's been pretty ineffective and spinning of plates again. So I do feel like I need to improve significantly in that area, but we're gradually seeing that kind of go up. So
Excellent. Jonny, this has been absolutely fascinating. And for the folks who are still on the call, Mauli and Alan, do you have any questions that you want to ask Jonny? You know, you may have a situation that maybe he can cast some light on. You can turn your microphones on if you want.
Hi guys.
Hi.
So what kind of made, what was the signal that made you make that change, Jonny? What was it that kind of switched your thinking and your focus?
so I struggle to point to one specific moment. I just wasn't happy. Yeah, I like working for Tapalti a lot. It's got a lot of great qualities. I love the people that I work with, and that's great. But I just was not happy and not fulfilled with my work. You know, it was at the point of, am I actually going to continue with this, or am I going to try and do something different? And my decision was, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, there are things that have developed over time, things that I can build upon. I have shown that I'm not completely and utterly incompetent over the years. And but you have to have fulfillment. You know, I'm not necessarily one to kind of buy into the whole influencer thing of, like, you know, you got to be happy all the time and all of that kind of stuff. But I think fulfillment is important. Like, feeling like when you wake up, the work that you do does make a difference. That you help people, whether that be the people immediately around you internally or the people around you externally. And that was the biggest catalyst for wanting to change my mindset and for adopting something like the seller code as a framework of thinking, because life's too long to spend it miserable.
Well, when you're at my end of the spectrum, life's too short. One of the things that I've been working on this week, and again, for those watching or listening, I fundamentally believe that what we put in writing changes us, which is why I'm a huge advocate of journaling, of writing your thoughts down. And you know, the weakest ink is stronger than the strongest memory. You know, bear that in mind. If you write it down, you don't lose it. You might have to try and find it later if your filing's as bad as mine, but it's somewhere. Now, writing it down also embeds it. But when we put our commitments in writing, that changes us for the future. But then when we present our values to the customer, and we do that in a way that positions what we are doing as in their best interests, it frames things differently, because I think our intent going into the relationship is important. It's not going into the sale, it's going into a lifetime of potentially doing business together. And so I've come up with this email to send before a meeting, and it's just simply to confirm the time. But it goes, "Dear Jonny, I'm really looking forward to our chat. I'm a big believer in doing business in a way that puts our conversation and your needs first. That's why I follow a set of principles laid out in the seller code. It's all about being transparent, fair, and genuinely helpful. Take a peek at the code if you get a chance with the link. It's not about legalities or small print. It's just about how I like to do things. And of course, your perspective matters to me. I'm all ears if there's ever anything you think I could be doing better. Looking forward to meeting you on Thursday at 3 on Zoom, Marcus." Now, I'm curious. if you were to send that before, and this is a question for Alan and Mawuli as well, what would that do in terms of shifting how you showed up, the standards that you would hold yourself to? Alan, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think it would make a massive difference in terms of kind of what they were expecting. And because you've already set their expectations, you would, I think, naturally just flow into trying to meet those expectations that that person will have of you. And that will probably improve the quality of the work that you're doing. And they will see that without trying to force it.
Absolutely. Simple first step. Just add the link to your digital email signature, to the seller code. If you're feeling really brave, some wording along the lines of, I'm proud to sell within the seller code, or through the seller code, and put the link. And it's a statement, because if they click on it and they read it, and I want people to read it before they meet me, because I think that positions things very differently. If I live up to that expectation, then the onus is on them to reciprocate. I genuinely want a partnership, and I don't want a transaction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think words matter. A bit of a symptom that I've seen is I think we get complacent with things like this because people have email fatigue. We see all sorts of LinkedIn influencers post about the failures of emails and all of that kind of stuff. But I think my opinion as of today is that this stuff matters. What you write in an email matters. Even if someone doesn't read it, what you write matters. Even if it doesn't matter to the person receiving it, it matters to you.
Absolutely.
As the writer.
That is a fantastic epiphany. I'm stealing that. Thank you. Okay, so let's wrap up. In terms of the advice that you would give to someone who's considering, how do I navigate the pressure of succeeding, achieving my objectives in life, without making myself an obstacle, and also navigating the politics and the pressures of working within an employer, and also trying to keep alliances healthy, both internally and externally? I mean, if you're starting that journey, it feels very daunting. What's the simple first step?
So I'm a big believer in decision-making frameworks, not scripts or anything like that, but decision-making frameworks. So the first thing I would say is, what matters to you? Like, does how you do your job matter, or is the results only what matters to you? And going back one step is what actually makes you feel fulfilled, what actually makes you feel happy. And that could be as simple as one line on each point. Maybe you have it written down on the wall, maybe you have it in your notes, post-it note, in the email signature, whatever it is, and use that to define how you behave. But it all starts with looking inwards and thinking about why you do it, what you want to get out of it, and what will ultimately lead you to be as fulfilled as possible in the long term. And then my biggest advice to anyone is everything you can control is internal. So how you write an email, how you make a phone call, how you behave, how you analyze, how you articulate, those are the things that you can control, and that's all internal. all of the external pressures, all of that kind of stuff. Your boss might wake up on the wrong side of bed one day and say, where's this, where's that? You can't control that. You just have to deal with it as it comes. But if your guiding principle is, I want to behave in a way to help those around me, that conversation can maybe be less conflict and more collaborative of, okay, here's what I'm doing, here's why I'm doing it, and here's why I think it benefits not only the prospect, but it benefits me, and that in turn benefits you. And I think that some of that pressure and all that kind of stuff that comes from working in this type of role. But everything starts from internal, and to have a mindset of improvement, I think is critical for this type of job. Just do your best, do what you can, try and improve.
Well, that's all about intrinsic motivation. It's about your values and living them. So I'm posting some questions into the chat to help people to develop a really clear understanding of what matters most. And I'll read them out for the audience listening on audio only. So, what are the top 3 challenges or opportunities that you're currently facing in your business? And how do you believe they're impacting your ability to achieve your goals? And whether that's your business or your role. If you could wave a magic wand and eliminate one of those challenges or seize one of those opportunities overnight, which one would you choose and why? Imagine it's 12 months from now and you've successfully overcome that challenge or seized that opportunity. What would be different in your business, your role, your life, and how would you and your team be feeling? As you think about the journey to get from where you are now to where you want to be, what do you believe are the most important factors or capabilities that will enable your success? In your experience, what have been some of the biggest obstacles or roadblocks that prevented you from addressing this challenge or opportunity in the past? As you evaluate the potential partners or solutions to help you achieve your goals, what are the most important qualities or characteristics you look for, and why are they important to you? And if we were to work together to help you overcome this challenge or seize this opportunity, what would success look like for you, and how would you measure it over time? Think deeply about those questions, because there's a counter question to that, which is, what am I doing that I wouldn't want done to me and that I wouldn't want done to others? Because your gut will tell you when you're focused on what doesn't matter. Your gut will tell you when you're serving yourself before your customer. And Jonny's point about self-reflection, I cannot stress enough. You need time to reflect and think critically and humanely, consequentially. It's not good enough to think just critically, because that makes you cruel. You just treat people like a number on a balance sheet. They're an organic ATM. Your objective is to build a relationship that is built on real trust, on consistency, and on dependency, that both sides know that they can depend on the other to serve the long-term best interest of the partnership. Now, that's a wonderful place to work from. So any final thoughts, Jonny? Because you have been utterly spectacular. Thank you.
Thank you. So, I mean, one of the things that I'm going to do after this call is I've copied and pasted these into a Google Doc. And one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to think about how I probably asked these questions in the past. You know, rather than what are your top 3 challenges, it's where's the pain previously, as an example. And I'm going to spend half an hour doing that. And then I'm going to kick off the things that I have to do in the calendar. So my big takeaway for anyone that's got all the way to the end here is just take the time, think about what matters to you, and then think and take the time to focus on what matters to you. Don't worry about anyone else's agenda. Take the time, and invest in yourself.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, since the age of 22, 23, I think I put in something like 2 to 6 hours a day of study. It's not felt like work. I've enjoyed every minute. Well, I say I've enjoyed every minute of it. There have been some crap books I've read along the way. But the reality is, even that stuff has taught me what not to do. And that constant building up of range and depth allows you to have the ability to connect the dots. And in a sales role, in a leadership role, you need to help your customers, your people, see round corners and transfer the confidence that you are on the pitch beside them, helping them win the game, but win the game the right way. So, Jonny, thank you so much. Utterly bowled over and humbled, in all honesty, by your vulnerability and just the incredible thoughtfulness with which you approach your profession. It's a delight. You know, I have hope for the future.
Thank you. And that's, yeah, a thank you to yourself as well. Like, one of the things that, just to add on the previous point there, is something I've really struggled with is how to think about this stuff. Like, it's all well and good me saying take the time to invest in yourself, but I didn't really know how to do that. And our relationship and your mentorship is helping me to do that. So maybe it's not necessarily about what you teach, it's how do you help me get there to the point where I feel like I'm improving. So finding the right avenue for that, I think, is important, whether that's with a mentor, whether that's with a coach, whether it's just with your mate in the office. You know, whatever avenue works. There's no predefined template for that. But yeah, a thank you, because this journey wouldn't be the way it is without your input.
I'm so pleased. I mean, you've made my week, and it's only Wednesday. Cool. Okay, so for those of you who are listening or watching, then please get involved with the Seller Code group. First thing, just lurk, ask a few questions. The forum is there as a high challenge, high support, experimental environment where we're going to be testing stuff. We're going to be testing ideas and concepts. I'm going to be bringing buyers into my podcast, The Inquisitor. I'm planning to do a series called Caveat Venditor, so sellers beware. And I want to bring professional buyers in and people who are likely to be end customers to the audience, for them to say what they're looking for when they're looking for a relationship with a salesperson, as opposed to simply trying to milk them for information or to find a price. We as salespeople have a responsibility to elevate the profession by how we show up, how we prepare, how we practice. And this is a movement, this is a community, and it's there to support you in this journey. We are all learning. None of us are the finished article. What you'll find with this community is it's a bunch of people who are struggling just like you. Some of us, our history may be your future. And with any luck, I'll find someone whose history is my future. So, you know, we need to work together to make selling the noble profession it should be. Our job is simply to help people make good decisions well, not make bad decisions, not make good decisions badly, and to ensure they feel safe so that if something goes wrong, they are protected and we have not done anything that would cause us to look with shame in the mirror because we served ourselves over the customer. And that's the whole ethos of what we're doing. Please get involved. If you feel that you can be active in being an ambassador, if you've got ideas on how we can get 1 million people by the 1st of January 2029 to have the seller code on their email signature and to be living it every day, struggling with it, then that's our goal. Because I believe that is how we create the next generation of leaders. And you're part of it. Don't be passive. So thank you all. It's been absolute joy, Jonny. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thanks,
listening.
guys. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.